Hey guys, welcome back. Before I get started, I've made a promise, and because I am a woman of my word, I'm going to keep it. So I'd like to give a special shout out to Drew and Chris Gregg. Hello, gentlemen. Your shout out as promised. Let's get into our Today in History. Today in History, April 2nd, 1992. A jury in New York finds mobster John Gotti, nicknamed the Teflon Don for his ability to elude conviction, guilty on 13 counts, including murder and racketeering. On June 23rd of that year, Gotti was sentenced to life in prison, dealing a significant blow to organized crime. So if any of you know anything about organized crime in New York, it was still pretty prevalent, probably still is, and there were certain, within the Italian mafia for sure, mob families that rose to power within that community. The Gotti name is probably one of the most infamous names in mafia history, especially in New York, and John Gotti really ran a lot of those illegal dealings. Right? Teflon is a surface that doesn't allow things to stick to it, so that's the Teflon Don, meaning that no charges ever stuck. He was never found guilty of any of the things that he did. So yeah, pretty important in terms of government crackdown on mafia dealings. Okay, let's get into the work for today. All right, so the first thing I want to do is address the lesson that was due today. In speaking to some of you, I think you guys were kind of confused because there are two lesson 20s that pop up on your Google Classroom when you go in there. So this one right here is like the actual quizzes where you could go in and you could do it. Down here, right, is just, it's the link to the YouTube video just of me explaining the lesson as always, and then over here is a Google form. It's just like a check for me. It just asks you to go in, looks like this, go in, put your name. There's a drop down menu that asks you, did you complete the quiz, yes or no, right? Obviously, hopefully if you're coming in here, you're telling me, yes, I just finished the quiz, right? And then just wanted to check in with you guys, see how your week is going so far. I think one of the things that I enjoy most about being a teacher and being with you guys is checking in and seeing how your lives are going, and I haven't really been able to do that because when I talk to you, it's in like a larger group setting in Google Meet, so just like checking in, tell me how things are going, you know I like to know those things. All right, next, your lesson for today. We are officially moving on from World War II, and we are entering our new unit. Woo! I can tell you're excited because I'm excited. All right, so the unit that we will be starting today is the Civil Rights Movement. All right, so we are out of war now. The United States is returning to a sense of normalcy, right? And people are now starting to focus on social issues, things that are wrong or they deem to be wrong within the United States during this point in time, right? And during the 1950s and 1960s, we're going to see a push for African Americans to be fully granted rights. Right, we talked about with Reconstruction how legally 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments African Americans are supposed to be treated equally underneath law within the United States. However, we know that the Southern government is finding ways around that, right? Things like Jim Crow laws, black codes, things of that nature, where they're finding loopholes in the system, and African Americans are still being discriminated against in the United States, right? So during the 1950s and 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement, we see a push for African Americans to truly be treated equal within this country, all right? So we're going to talk a little bit about how they accomplished that, right? And what is the outcome and the impact socially and in terms of the government within the United States. So the first lesson that you have will connect what we learned in Reconstruction and bridge the gap from, really the 1860s to the 1950s and 60s, right? So it was separate, really equal, right? Hopefully you guys remember when we talked about Plessy versus Ferguson, right? That ruling that came down, right? Just to recap, Homer Plessy was 1/8 African American, right? And he went on to a train car, and because of the Separate Train Car Act, African Americans and whites need to sit in different sections. Homer Plessy, being 1/8 African American, would have had to sit in the African American car, right? But because, remember from the picture that we saw, he did not physically present as African American, right? People didn't realize, right? So he sits in the white car, and then when the conductor comes around to check tickets, he makes them aware of the fact that he is 1/8 African American, refuses to move to the African American car, and is arrested, right? It eventually goes to trial, and they find that Homer Plessy was in fact guilty, and that it establishes the practice of separate but equal, meaning as long as you have the same facilities for African Americans and whites, that they don't deem it as discrimination because you are providing services for both, right? But we knew that a lot of the time the services and the facilities that were provided to African Americans were nowhere near as good as the services and facilities that were provided for whites. All right, so we want to see, was separate really equal in the South? Is that a practice that can be upheld under the law? Right, so what you guys have here is 4 sources. Each one of them talks about experiences that African Americans had in the South in different aspects of their life, whether it be going to a restaurant or education or how they were punished for breaking the law, things of that nature. And you need to go through each one. And it says, provide a title for each source that would best describe the main idea. So just like quick 1 or 2 words that you would put as like a title if you were doing your annotations to sum up everything. And then explain how separate was not equal using evidence in the source. Okay, so you're going to tell me, how are African Americans being discriminated against here, right? How are they being treated differently? What is wrong with what's happening or what you're reading about, right? Pretty straightforward. There is no do now and there's no exit card for this one. Exit cards, I'm not going to give you every single lesson, right? I'm going to try to get a little as close to normal as possible, right? We don't do exit cards every day in class, so I don't think it's fair to ask you to do them here. And do nows you also won't see anymore, right? Generally in class I use do nows to start conversations with you guys, right? To get you asking questions and to connect the lesson. If we're not in class together, there is no conversation that's happening. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of background and explain, right, the way I've been doing in these videos, but I think if I don't need to give you that amount of work, then I don't think it's necessary, right? I'm trying to make this as easy and painless for you as possible. Right? So that should be everything for today. If you guys need anything, as always, please reach out to me. Also, make sure that you are submitting all of your work. I have a few of you that haven't submitted a bunch of things. I will be sending out emails today to contact your parents so that they're aware of that, but just please try and make sure that you are adhering to those deadlines that we have. Also, you're going to notice that I'm going to start putting a value on all of your lessons. It won't necessarily be that it's right or wrong, it's just I'm going to go in and make sure that you are completing them. This way you guys get credit for the work that you are doing. All right, that should be everything. I hope you guys have a great day. It is incredibly beautiful outside, so maybe get out, stretch, go for a run, a bike ride, something if your parents let you. But always be safe and make good choices. Bye guys.